Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Friday Feelings, where we turn emotions into power, vulnerability into strength, and remind you to feel everything, fear nothing, and transform your life. I'm your host, Jenelle Friday, and today we are actually talking about something that's very near and dear to my heart because if you know my story, you know that there are extreme tragedies that I've had to work through. I call them Mount Everests. So today's title is how do you keep going when life falls apart? I think it's something that resonates with every human being on the planet. And I think if you're listening to this episode, you're going to find amazing nuggets of wisdom from my amazing guest. So I want to say hello to Miss Leah Russo. Leah, thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, happy to join you. I'm excited about it.
Me too. So you and I met because I was a customer success manager at Adobe, and you were using Marketo and Visible at your organization. You were part of the marketing team, and um, I think when I think when good people connect and you kind of see each other and you resonate, it sticks with you. And so, where we've not been in touch for all these years, right, there was just an immediate connection that we've been building on. And then recently we've reconnected and I got to hear your story. And here you are. You've gone through some incredible opportunities of growth that have been difficult and you've had a tremendous transformation. So, that's why you're here with us today.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's awesome because you've seen portions of that, and now I get to tell basically the full story.
Yeah, I love that. Well, so let's kind of talk about what we're really digging into, which is primarily resilience. I often joke and say, if you're alive, you're resilient. Right? At a base level, I think everyone has resilience, but I think it's a buzzword. And I really want to talk about what does it actually mean when life falls apart? Maybe you're battling with depression. Maybe you've had suicidal thoughts. Maybe you are in the depths of despair and it's difficult to see the light at the end of the tunnel. What do you do in those moments? So, we're going to dive into Leah's story. And really, the focus, as you know, on this podcast is practical tools because, quite frankly, I'm not going to tell you to read a book. I'm not going to tell you to get on your knees and pray and meditate. That is not a solution for the most difficult moments in life. It requires purposeful, intentional action and getting out of your comfort zone because if it didn't work for you yesterday, it's not going to work for you today and it's not going to work for you tomorrow. So, let's talk about what is resilience. It's the ability to adapt and recover in the face of adversity, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. Resilience isn't about being unbreakable. It's about getting back up when everything inside of you says, "Don't stay down. I give up." So, Leah, resilience for you is a way of life, I would say. Is that a fair statement?
It is.
Okay.
It's the most authentic way I live life, I feel like.
Love
And
that.
for me, my journey with resilience has really dynamically changed over even the last decade plus some, right? I used to think that resilience meant being tough, sucking it up, pushing through the pain, right? Smiling through it, putting on a facade. And what I've really learned, especially in the last year, has been that resilience is soft, it's slow, it's messy, right? It's moving forward when your life is completely dismantled and you need to build everything from the inside out, right? You have to get comfortable with that uncomfortable, that unknown, and really sit in it and know that it's less about bouncing back and more about becoming.
I love that. So you have multiple examples you could share, but we only have so much time. Right? So let's start with, you and I talked earlier and I asked you to come up with 1 to 2 examples of things that were catalysts in your life. So let's start with the first one.
Yeah. So, a little over 10 years ago, I left my first marriage. I packed up my life. I moved across the country with no safety net. I didn't really know anybody, and I wasn't necessarily sure that I was going to make it. And I successfully did it. But then after that, I faced multiple endless surgeries, which is, you knew me through that time, right? It was tough. And I went through 5 major spinal surgeries. And just when I thought I was healing myself, just when I thought I had overcome and become this new version of myself, my body was breaking. And I learned how to rebuild myself emotionally and mentally and spiritually through all of that. Right. And I think for me, the biggest thing was, even through all of that time where it felt like I was falling, or it felt like, oh my God, I just got things together, things are picking up. Um, it's that continuous movement of rising, even when it doesn't feel safe.
Or you physically can't.
Or I physically can't. Like I can't walk. I can't get out of
Yeah.
bed. I can't,
Yeah.
um, I'm in the hospital for weeks. What does that look like? It's those rock bottom moments.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so let's go back to your first example, right? You made the choice to leave a marriage, 10-year marriage. We don't need to get into the nitty-gritty, right? That's that's not what we're going to focus on. But what I want to focus on is you moved across the country sight unseen without a network,
Yeah,
right?
scary.
Very scary because for the most part, change and the unknown keeps a lot of us from moving forward. So I
Hmm.
want you to go back to that moment when you said, I'm terrified, but I'm going to step forward anyway. Talk us through that moment.
Yeah. I think a lot of it was reframing the terrified into, what could this potentially open up as an opportunity for me to step into my true self, or get back to that person that I felt like as a child, where I could do anything, right? And it was scary, but I think it was also that reframing of looking at it and being like, what could this do if I took the fear out of it and I sat down and I just looked at the opportunity ahead of me? What would that look like? And visualizing it really helped in terms of saying, like, I think I can do it. It's terrifying. I think I can do it, but let's just see where it goes. And now I my life has been a 180 since then.
Was there a moment because obviously you had to make the decision to say I've had enough. I'm done. I'm
Hmm.
leaving. I'm calling it quits, right?
Yeah.
And you could have sat in that moment and stayed in bed for months, right?
Yeah.
There's so many outcomes that could have happened. So I really want to quantify for you, for me, for the audience, right? What was the trigger for you to say, I need something different? Was it I think sometimes change happens when it's more painful to stay in the circumstances we're in than to step forward and change. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. And to be honest, I stayed in that uncomfortable comfortable, right? Of, hey, this is my life. This is what I signed up for. I'm going to push through. I'm going to make it work. I'm going to try everything I can do. And um, it took having a great support system at the time to be like, hey, you deserve better than this. You deserve you know, a life that makes you happy. And it's hard to hear that when you're comfortable already. It's really hard to leave comfortable. Um, Even when it comfortable isn't good. Like, it's hard to
Yeah,
leave that, right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
I think for me, looking at it from a 50,000 foot view of, is this what I envisioned my life being? Like, am I really truly happy? If I thought about my 5-year-old self or my 10-year-old self, is this what she would have wanted for me?
Mm.
And that was really powerful, to think back
Yeah,
and be like, no, I never wanted
yeah.
to stay here. I never wanted to be in a situation like this. And if you talk to anybody that knows me from back in those days, or before, they'll tell you that I'm an extremely strong, extremely resilient woman, and that they didn't know who I was during that time. They couldn't see me as that person. And looking back, right, I see it now. But when you're in that, and when you're in the thick of it, it's really hard to see that for yourself. It's really hard. And it took me to the point where I was like, okay, I've got to make some changes here. I don't know what that looks like, right? But I have got to make some changes because this just cannot be my life. I deserve more for myself. I have worked so hard. This can't be it for me.
I totally resonate with that. And I didn't have a 10-year foundation to walk away from, but I got married in my early 20s, and on our honeymoon, it turned violent,
Yeah.
turned into a completely different person. And I was desperately insecure, didn't want to be alone. So I accepted that state of being. And
Yep.
it only lasted 2.5 years, till I finally was like, I need help. And I reached out in desperation to a coworker who said, yeah, I'll be there to make sure when you
Yeah.
tell the truth and walk away, you're safe. But that, especially as a woman, I think a lot of women identify with that feeling of like, am I going to be okay by myself? Because we've kind of been trained that we need a man,
Yep.
right? I mean,
Yep.
I'm a Disney princess girl. I'm not going to lie. I love the Prince Charming love story. But what I've learned in my adult life, right, is that that is a lie. The
Hmm.
lie is that you are not capable as a woman to stand on your own 2 feet. Now, I have a lot of male listeners. If you're a guy and you're like, preach on, sister, good for you. Or you have a wife who enjoys having that male counterpart, because I do, right? I have a husband
Yeah.
who's a manly, burly Colorado man, and I love that about him. But I also have realized, and I see this in you too, is that I am not going to let myself become dependent on anyone ever again. I've
Yep.
got to know that if he passes away, if we go bankrupt, if the world ends, that I'm going to be scrappy and figure it out,
Hmm.
right?
Exactly.
So, from a relationship standpoint, if you go back to those moments, what, let's say one or two critical things about yourself that you learned in that process of leaving that relationship.
I think for me, I I didn't necessarily view myself as strong and resilient while I was going through it, right?
We
Because
never
it's
do.
hard. You don't see that till you're out of it.
Yeah.
Um, but I was, and even when I felt overwhelmed, I was still making tiny steps in moving forward. I was still finding a community that was supporting me, and I was evaluating my community and making sure that the people that were in it were lifting me up, not holding me back, right? And that were a very strong support system that I could lean on in any moment's notice. If I needed to get out, I could get out, right? Um, Women, leaning on women, right? I think that's a
Yes.
huge part of it.
Yes.
My very, very, very best friend, I mean, the night I left, she had chocolate therapy, Ben and Jerry's ice cream sitting there waiting for me. And she was a phone call away and knew exactly what to do. And I think
Mm.
knowing, and this is something I continuously go back to even now, knowing when it's okay to say, you know what, I'm overwhelmed. I need help. Um, it's not a weakness. It's not.
No.
I know it feels like it is, right? It feels like you're not being strong and you're not being independent when you're saying those things, but it is okay to not be that all the time, right? It is okay to step back and say, "Oh my God, I really need just a set, like I need to set and reset. Like I need to step back, take a moment, take a deep breath, maybe take one little action to move to the next thing that you could possibly do." Because if you look at it, and we were talking about this earlier, if you look at it from wide scope of things, of all the things that you need to do to get yourself out of that situation or to be able to move forward, it's so overwhelming. It's so overwhelming. Sometimes to the point where you'll talk yourself out of it.
Yeah.
And you need a change. You need to take that step forward. So what does that micro step look like for you? Is it
Yeah.
just getting out of bed? Is it being able to treat yourself to some chocolate ice cream with your best friend? Is it making a
Mm,
plan or visualizing what your life could potentially look like if you made
mm,
such a dynamic change? Is it reframing it as an opportunity instead of a suffocating moment in silence, right?
yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
what is that for you?
Yeah. So as I'm listening to you talk, and I love that you know, the best friend story. What happens if you don't have anybody? If there's a listener who's going, I would love to do that, but there's no one in my life that I trust to be that vulnerable with, right? I can relate to that a little bit because by the time I was at the 2.5 year mark with this individual, he had isolated me from my family. I was not allowed to have friends. He would
Mm-hmm.
call my work to make sure that I was there, and he would make sure I'd left on time and came straight home. I was completely isolated. And sometimes I think we stay in the environment of fear and isolation without knowing, what do I do if I don't have anybody? I don't have a best friend to eat ice cream with, Leah. I don't have
Yeah.
a mom to come bail me out if I don't know what to do. How would you encourage an individual in that role right now?
Um, so speaking from experience here, my best friend that brought me that ice cream passed away 7 years ago unexpectedly. So I know what that feels like now to not have that. And
Mm,
it's scary because it really does feel like you're in it alone. But the reality is there are people that are so good in this world that will help you through things, right? I have leaned on doctors in the past that I trust, right? Um, I mean, one of my doctors has become one of my closest friends and what I would consider somebody on my board of advisors. Um, it's the most unexpected people that will lean out and help you if you become vulnerable and share what you're going through because you don't have to do it alone, right? It's not something that, as isolating as it feels and as scary as it is to open up about, especially when you're in an abusive situation, because it's it comes off to me, or at least it did back in the day, that sharing what I was experiencing in my home environment, even with work colleagues, would paint me in a negative light, that I wasn't a strong woman, that I was allowing someone to do that to me, right? It's not something that I was openly sharing with my family. Um, and I think it's okay. I mean, to even reach out to one, like if you have an annual appointment, tell your doctor. You know, people are not going to judge you. They're actually going to want to help you. You can reach out and tell a stranger, right? You can say, hey, do you have a second to chat? I can't tell you the amount of people that I've randomly asked if they would have coffee with me just because I needed someone to ask advice about one or two things. I mean, there are things you could look in your neighborhood, see if there's a book club or, reach out to any of the many groups online and see an area that you're interested in that would bring you joy. For me, right, being outside, being in nature, hearing birds, it soothes my nervous system. It calms me down. So for me, I was really into photography at the time. So I joined a photography group and I leaned on that network of people and shared what I was going through because okay, if they don't see what, like, they're not going to judge me. They don't really know me. It's
yeah,
okay to share that. Like, it's
yeah,
okay to open up and it's okay to ask for help.
yeah.
Because we all need it. If you're not going through this right now, there will be a point in your life where something big is going to happen to you and you're going to need some tools in your toolkit to help you through it because I have not
Yeah.
found one person that can do this alone.
Well, we're not meant to live life alone. I do say that a lot, right?
Yeah.
Human beings are built to be in community. Even cavemans live together. Come on, people.
Yeah.
Okay, but so I really want to touch on, if you are not in an abusive relationship or you've never experienced that, that's not what we're focused on here. I'm
Yeah.
going to bring this back to brass tacks, simple wording, which is emotional trauma. Okay.
Yep.
I've heard people say, well, I've never really been through emotional trauma. I'm sorry. Whether it's your childhood, your teenage years, your 20 somethings, you're trying to adult in your 30s, you're in your 40s and figuring it out, you're in your 50s and 60s retiring, there is trauma along the way. Now, it's not trauma that will lead to suicidal thoughts, but trauma nonetheless shapes us, right? Period. And when you're in an emotionally difficult relationship or circumstance, I have this term that I use, which is your base operating program. Okay. From an emotional intelligence perspective, that is self awareness. So, to relate to that, I was raised in a very conservative Christian household, and my base operating program that I was ingrained with was I'm always right. I was completely blind because it was a subconscious belief. Okay. So, from that perspective, trauma often creates our triggers. Trauma often flavors our imposter syndrome negative voice that we often listen to and plays on repeat. Okay. So you went through this massive emotional trauma. You're standing on your own 2 feet. You're really proud of yourself. And then the other ball drops, which is now you are going through radical physical trauma. Okay. That's a
Mhm.
trauma on a totally different level. We've got a brand new track playing of physical trauma. And in the moment, I'm like, boy, girl, I just can't wrap my mind around 5 spinal surgeries and the mental strength that you had to have to go through not one, not two, but 5 and come out to be who you are today. So let's shift gears and now talk about that physical trauma and how it has shaped who you are.
Yeah, I think man, the physical's trauma, it's something else. It's a whole different level than other things that I have experienced. And the physical pain, it's so debilitating and so relentless. And I think that's the differentiator in between the two is that the emotional pain, I could find moments of joy where I could step away from it and be like, oh, I'm sharing a laugh with a friend, or hey, I'm having a really great cup of coffee. But the the thoughts kind of swirl, but you're not physically sitting there in pain. You're not like from a pain perspective, there have been days where I can't drive. I can't walk, right? I'm in a diaper. Like real humbling experiences. And I think surgery after surgery, I remember being flat on my back and wondering, am I ever going to feel whole again? Like, is this ever going to stop? It is this ever going to give me a break where I feel like I can come up through for air? And yet I continued to power through and figure out a way to navigate it in a different perspective. And I think shifting, even going through back to back to back to back surgeries like that, um, for me, I thought the lowest low was leaving the marriage, moving across the country. And then a couple years ago, I lost my job. And I had been walking around on a broken ankle for 6 months and didn't realize it. Went into the doctor. He's like, oh, you need surgery. 3 weeks after I had ankle surgery, I needed an emergency neck surgery on multiple levels in my neck and couldn't use my left arm. And so I'm like, I need to find a job. Like I can't keep doing this. This is crazy. So I had the neck surgery and 3 weeks later I started working again. I mean, it was just absurd. But for me, it was just, okay, I just need to get through this one hard thing and look at the next thing ahead of me and find humor in it. So for me, I reframed it. I said, I'm not going to let this ankle surgery, screw me up. I am going to sit down. If I have to get a scooter, I'm going to decorate the crap out of that scooter. I put lights on it. I put a bell
Yes.
on it. I found a way to make it mine and bring some humor into it so that I could laugh as I went through it. And I think part of that was due to my now husband. He is hysterical. Um, he has helped me go through all of these surgeries and continue to just look forward towards the next thing, even with the setbacks, because we all
Well,
know
before
healing
we,
isn't linear, right?
yeah, before we get too far down this, I really want to identify when you think you can't continue, you're at rock bottom.
Yeah.
I've been a Friends fan for forever, and I remember when Rachel figures out that Ross is in love with her and she goes to the airport and he's dating somebody else and she gets back and she listens to him talk to her on the phone and she goes, I thought it couldn't get any worse, but it's like there's crap, there's the level below crap, there's rock bottom, and then there's me. Like it
Yeah.
just keeps going. So if you'd be kind enough, I would love for you to talk us through a moment where maybe you were in the hospital, maybe you were home and you couldn't, and you were just at the lowest of low. There's a moment where your brain says, I can't continue.
Yeah.
This has to stop. I don't know how I'm going to take another breath. Where do you go from there? What were you telling yourself? What did you have to do to get out of that mental bottomless black hole of just I'm
Yeah.
done. I'm done.
Um, I think for me, and that's a hard place to go back to be honest, because it's dark. But especially being in the hospital, the last surgery almost took my life in multiple ways. And it was hard. I really didn't think I had it in me to keep going after that. And I think realizing that I still had a choice, that I still had power, even if it's only 1% power, right? I still had a choice. I still could sit there in pain and think, I'm going to get myself out of here. I don't know how, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to get myself out of here. And then I'll figure out the next thing that I got to do. But having some type of agency in it has really helped me realizing that, like, I do have a little bit of power in this, even though it feels like it's got the grasp on me. And so, one of the things that I've learned over the past year, and I owe this to one of my great ladies in my community that helps me, is an agency list. So, coming up with ways that you can reclaim your power when you're in a state of overwhelm. And this still happens to me, right? I'm battling all these autoimmune diseases. I don't think anybody's shocked about that, right? You've heard some of the things I've gone through.
Yeah.
So I get these flares and it's very overwhelming. Sometimes I can't move, sometimes I'm in spasm. So, what are things that I still have agency over my body on, right? Whether that's getting on a heating pad, whether that's sitting and watching the birds outside, whether that's asking my husband, hey, can you make me a coffee and laying in bed on my heating pad? Those are things that I still have control over, even when it's not me doing it for myself, right? It's, hey, I can still control some things. And it doesn't fix everything, but it just reminds me I'm not powerless. And to me, that tiny sense of agency can be the difference between spiraling and stabilizing things.
I love that. And I'm here comes the the neuroscience nerd that's becoming me, which is just weird because I'm not numbers or science or whatever. But to all of the things that I talk about from the perspective of your thoughts literally create your reality. No, not in everything, right? We can't manifest things physically that I can't manifest $1 million. I'm probably going to say that a million times, but people take it too literally. What I'm saying is, in that moment in your brain, you told yourself, yes, I can. I will step forward, even if it's only 1%. I'm not dead. I still have a choice. And you mentally made a decision. That mental decision is an electrical spark in your brain that then goes to the nervous system, that goes to create emotions and feelings to get up and out mentally and physically feel yourself go, I still can. I can go grab a heating pad. I can roll over to the other side. I could sit up and read a book. Maybe you can't do that. Like, right? The whole concept here is that, and what you weren't realizing in that moment is there is scientific, physical things happening because of what you're thinking. And that rolls into your body responding and creating the reality of what you've told yourself you're going to do. Right. So I want to highlight that because I think there are some people out there that go, EQ is so woo-woo. And I honestly had never heard that term until like 6 months ago. And I was like, what is that? And it's like, oh, the feel good, sunshine, rainbows. It's just kind of woo-woo out there. Okay, let's ground ourselves in the reality. We are not just talking about think positively. There is scientific evidence that your thoughts generate your emotions and your body accepts those thoughts as reality. Period. That's the science behind it. So here we are now. How long has it been since your last surgery?
3 years,
Three
three and a half
years.
years.
Three and a
Yeah.
half years. And from the surgery until today, what would you highlight as before the surgery, I was this. After the surgery, now I'm this.
Okay. Before the surgery, I would say I was very much a hamster running on a wheel in the dark, just
Mhm.
trying to move forward to the next thing, right?
But not
And
getting
now,
anywhere.
but not getting anywhere, just more
Yeah,
hurdles, like a
right.
hamster running on a wheel, jumping over mountains, right? Like that's what I was doing. I felt like I was in a spiral almost. And now I feel like, and this is going to sound so silly, but I feel like I am, the captain of my own ship in a way. Like I am on the ocean, navigating the waters, but I am the captain who lays in the hammock on his own ship
Mm.
or her ship, right? Because for me, I think one of the biggest lessons I've learned through the last 3.5 years is that rest, that was the hardest lesson through all of this. Rest is a choice. It is giving that 1% to yourself, right? You don't
Yes.
have to be the hamster on the hamster wheel, jumping over every
Yes.
single mountain,
Yes.
being a powerful, hey, I can do it, I'm independent, right? That fatigue, it's not it's not a weakness. It's a message from your body, right? And there's power in knowing that I am enough, that I can navigate this right now exactly how I am.
I love that. So last week we heard from Nils, and Nils talked about how he visualizes a very specific scene in his mind that grounds him, that gives him peace, that allows him to refocus. And for him, he's visual. And he mentioned that some people are auditory. And then literally, you and I had this conversation. I'm like, well, what tools do you use to help yourself now? So talk us a little bit through the things that you do that you've discovered really help you and work for you.
Yeah, so I would say, the normal stuff of meditation and grounding and breathing, while they're great, it doesn't always work for me. I have ADHD, right? I've got a lot of things going on. I've got pain, chronic pain, so I've had to figure out different ways to cope. Reframing is huge for me. So shifting that story and finding beauty and humor in it of either decorating your scooter or in physical therapy, when I don't like doing certain exercises, I name them funny names. So
I love that.
like I'll call certain things sun reapers and all kinds of stuff. Like
I love that.
but it helps me get through it, right? And it feels like I'm giving myself a superpower. Um
Mm.
when I know that my body's experiencing a lot of overwhelming feelings or anxiety, I'm not good at identifying my feelings. I know that that is something that I personally struggle with, so I use a feelings wheel. And then I either sit down and go to ChatGPT and ask for, hey, I'm feeling these feelings. Give me some journaling prompts. Or I use those words and I paint I write them down on canvas and paint over them to express myself. Or sometimes I'll dance it out. I have playlists for different feelings that I have that I've made over the years that I will sit and listen to or dance it out real hard. Um, I'm really big into vision boards. I, someone in my community shared with me a quote about if you're not visioning your path forward, then you're just a character in someone else's intentional aims. And that was powerful to me. It made me really realize that I want to do things with intention. I don't want to be the hamster just jumping over endless hurdles on a wheel. I want to build a world for myself that supports my beliefs and my values. Um, and part of that is reaching out to your community and your friends or your doctors or, you know, people that have shown up for you in your life and being vulnerable when it matters. And I think also checking in with that circle, right? Your vibe attracts your tribe. So
Hmm.
I'm constantly auditing, hey, are they aligned with who I'm envisioning myself to be? Do they bring diversity of thought? Um, am am I setting good, solid boundaries with them, which was something else I had to work through,
That's
right?
a whole nother
That's a
episode.
whole nother episode. But
Yeah.
sitting down and really assessing with myself, like checking in almost and being like, hey, is what you're doing actually working for you?
Yeah.
And then rotating in and out what does and doesn't, because things
Right.
change, right?
Things change. Well, and I think what you've highlighted is you have a vision board, but you are not a visually stimulated individual. You are
No,
auditory. So when you told me that you have Friday dance parties to dance it out, I'm like, I need to adopt that. Can I come over and dance? You love listening to birds, right?
I
The hammock
do.
and the birds. And so I want to highlight that because where I'm very visual and music is for me, and it does different things for me than I think it does for you. Um, Not everybody's the same. And if you
No,
listen to someone talk about, well, I need to visualize it, and you're going, well, that's not me, don't quit listening. Don't stop digging in. Know that we are all uniquely built, motivated, inspired, moved. We learn differently, we communicate differently, and there's no one right way, and your way is not wrong. I want to
right.
highlight that because I've had a couple people say, well, is something wrong with me that I don't do it that way? And I'm like, no, it couldn't be
No,
further from the truth.
I 100% felt that way in the beginning when I was first dipping my toes into this. I'm like, oh, none of this is resonating with me. I don't feel like I can focus through any of it. I'm probably doing it wrong. And then I'm putting pressure on myself, right? So
Yeah.
then it was, okay, there's got to be a way to still get the benefit, but maybe just shift the approach.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I hate to say this, but we're closing in on time. We may even be over time, and that's okay. But I want to kind of highlight a couple things, statements, which is chaos, insecurity, doubt, depression is not a failure of
No,
character. It's not um, a weakness. It is part of the human experience that every single human being is going to go through at some point in their life. But it's also the birthplace of transformation, right? It
it is.
forces growth. So, my question to you, if you're listening, is what hard thing are you standing in today? What are you facing that feels insurmountable? What emotions are you feeling that are so powerfully driving you into a state of despair that you feel hopeless? Because now, Leah, I'm going to ask you, if a listener says, yeah, that's me, what practical advice can you give?
Um, Resilience isn't perfection. It's about giving yourself permission, right? Permission to fall apart, to ask for help, to rest, to start over, to believe in yourself that your story is still being written and there's endless possibilities in front of you ahead, and to give yourself permission to just take one teeny, teeny, tiny step to start that.
I love that. So, as we wrap today, Leah, if someone's like, oh my gosh, I got to connect with Leah, and you should, where can people find you and what are you working on right now?
Yeah, so people can find me on LinkedIn. I am also in a super big, scary uh, time of transition in my life. So really trying to figure out what my next step is. But if anything I shared today resonated with you, or if you are just learning how to give yourself permission, right? I'd love to be able to connect. You can find me on LinkedIn where I talk about resilience and emotional intelligence and building go to market clarity through real human connection. So reach out, Leah Russo on LinkedIn, and I would love to connect.
You're also a marketing genius, I have to say. Always will be a marketing powerhouse. So if you're someone who's like, man, I need someone who's really great with marketing, also, Leah. So man, we're gonna wrap, Leah. I want to record another continuation of what we're talking about because I feel like we could do this forever. But from the bottom of my heart, your transparency, your vulnerability, and willing to talk about the most difficult places that we as human beings exist in life is not easy. So thank you so much. Not just as my friend, but as someone who's willing to put yourself out there to help other people. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Always happy to help. And if I could be a, source of inspiration just to take that step, that's what I'm here for.
Well, you've inspired me, if that means anything. All right, everybody. Well, as I wrap today's episode, I'm going to again encourage you to be inspired to feel deeply, even if those feelings are terrifying, depressing, and make you feel like you're alone. Don't avoid the feeling. Lean into those feelings because the only way to get out of them is to work through them, to live fearlessly, to not allow fear to keep you from moving forward because everything you have ever wanted is on the other side of fear. And to remain authentic. Do not hide, do not make excuses, do not ignore or suppress. Be authentic, even if, as Leah says, you fall apart. I want you to keep leaning into your feelings because, as we've identified on this episode, that's where transformation occurs. It is from within, it is in the most difficult and most painful moments in life. And when you get through one, you build a little more muscle to know that you can get through another. So stay fearless. And I'm going to see you next Friday.